Yeah, this is Paul. Yeah. I'm just going through the state's response. Yes. To mandate personal service as a further requirement of the offense of violation of a protection order would undermine the legislative intent by creating an incentive for domestic violence perpetrators to avoid court appearances and avoid personal service. For the state to mandate personal service as a further requirement of the offense of violation of a protection order would undermine the legislative intent by creating an incentive for domestic violence perpetrators to avoid court appearances and avoid personal service. Yeah. Now, if you really read this, because this is the first time I've actually read this. I mean, I read this last night, but I never read the response from the state. I didn't really care what they had to say at that time. I had thought that law enforcement would enforce the due process rights of citizens, and since I'd informed those that are sworn oaths and affirmations that they had sworn that they would support and defend the ratification of the United States Constitution, Article number 7. uh, Personal service as a further requirement of the offense of violation of a protection order. Now, it seems to me that what they're trying to say in the state's response is, if we were to serve Paul after he's been arrested for violating an invalid protection order, all that would do would be to cause Paul, the respondent, to not want to show up in court and not want to receive personal service. So we as the state can issue an invalid protection order that violates the Constitution of the United States, and then we're not going to serve him, we're not going to use personal service after we had already served him an invalid protection order, because all that would do would be to cause the respondent to not want to go to court and not want to receive personal service. Now, when you think about it, it's probably the stupidest thing that I had read, because I read it last night and I did think about it, but I thought, well, why don't I just explain this again? Let's say you issued an invalid protection order and you did it 16 different times over the last 6 years. Yeah. And then you arrested me without probable cause because I wasn't in that city. And instead of serving me after the petitioner had re-petitioned the court, let's say that Heidi decided that she didn't want protection to start with, but then she wanted protection. Yeah. All that's going to do is cause me to try to run away from the court. I'm going to, under my incentive for domestic, to avoid court appearances and avoid personal service. Now, I've never avoided court appearances. In fact, I had emailed when the public defender's office had emailed me and they said, well, Judge Porter's requested your presence in court. And I'm like, well, what should a citizen respond? Pow, 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 pow. Well, I'm happy to go to court as long as you give me notice, summons, or subpoena. Now, when the court doesn't give actual notice to appear in court, it seems like somebody was alleging that I was trying to evade going to court, or I was trying to evade personal service. Now, when you really think about it, the state's response appears to know what I'm going to do as a respondent. Pow, pow. Instead of just personally serving me because they had my phone number, okay, in 2012, 2013, 2014. Instead of just sending me an email, Mr. Budnek, we have some court documents for you and we'd like you to go to the Clallam County Sheriff's Office to pick them up. They decided that they were going to make me look like that citizen that's trying to evade going to court, avoid court appearances, or avoiding personal service. Now, as that American that has emailed hundreds of thousands I've never avoided personal service because I never committed any crimes. I never avoided going to court, but I did require notice, subpoena, or summons to appear in court. Now I emailed those in Squim's police department. Did you get that email? I emailed those in the Port Angeles Police Department. In fact, in the email I said I am not trying to evade going to court. I just want the notice to have to appear in court. Now, somebody has been saying for 6 years that I've been avoiding going to court and that I was avoiding personal service. But the truth of the matter was, I always made myself available. I wore the same clothes for 4 years. I did the same stuff every day. The state is trying to make me seem like I'm avoiding them. But I'm that one citizen that has been communicating with the state that I'm not avoiding them. In fact, what I want is, I want the state to enforce the laws of the United States.